Har Har Mahadev for this next part of the story. If you remember, the gods and the demons were in a panic. Kaalakuta, a terrible poison, had risen from the depths of the ocean. Its fumes were everywhere. Life was suffocating. No one could survive this for long. Who would come to their rescue? On a distant mountain in the Himalayas, on Mount Kailash, a god of gods was meditating. He opened his eyes and he walked purposefully to this ocean. This was Shiva. And Shiva looked at the poison not as something to be feared or something disgusting. He knew that he had to save humanity and divinity alike from its terrible poison. He cupped his hands, he filled them with poison. He raised his hands to his lips and tipped it into his mouth, but instead of swallowing it, he held it here in his throat. He did it again, another handful of poison, raised it to his lips and held it in his throat. He did this again and again until all of the poison was gone and his throat stained blue. The gods and the demons could finally open their eyes. They could breathe again, and they joined their hands and called out, Neelkanth, the one with the blue throat. And that is how Shiva got the name Neelkanth. The gods and the demons were thrilled, and they continued churning the ocean. They churned and churned, and then a beautiful goddess rose from the ocean's depths. She was extraordinarily beautiful and was standing in a full-blown lotus. Her hands stretched out rained gold and jewels, and she was holding in her other hands a garland of flowers. She was looking around for someone. And immediately the gods and the demons knew this was no ordinary goddess. This was the goddess of wealth itself. Wealth, everything that is good and glorious, and everything that provides resources to all. This was in goddess Lakshmi. Now, if it's a goddess, she'd like to join herself and join forces with a god, so they can be partners together. So she looked around, and the gods and the demons all kind of straightened themselves and tried to look presentable. But the goddess looked past all of them, and Lakshmi's eyes fell on that dark, sleeping god over there on the serpent. And even as Vishnu slept, Lakshmi went and put her garland on his neck. And Lakshmi joined herself to the god who is a symbol of the preservation of the universe. In order to sustain society, we need wealth, we need resources, and that is Vishnu and Lakshmi. So the churning continued. But with all this energy, with all this churning, the mountain began to sink deeper and deeper into the ocean. Well, how would they churn now? It fell away. Vasuki's coils loosened and he was floating on the water. How could they churn anymore? Now what would happen? Well, Vishnu rose and he took the form of an enormous tortoise. His arms shortened and they became leathery and scaly, and his back widened into an enormous shell, and his eyes turned to reptile-like slits, and his lips disappeared into a reptile mouth. And this tortoise, Kurma, dove deep into the ocean. And when he came up, he held the mountain on his back. And this is the second avatar of Vishnu, Kurma Avatar. And with the mountain on his back, the gods and the demons were able to churn again. And the churning continued. What do you think will emerge next from the ocean's depths? Let's find out soon. See you next time.